medieval punishments that were worse than death. The Middle Ages were not just an era of castles, knights, and chivalry. Beneath the romanticized imagery lay a brutal world ruled by fear, rigid authority, and extreme violence. Justice was not about rehabilitation or fairness, it was about deterrence. Punishment needed to terrify, humiliate, and destroy not just the body, but the soul. In medieval Europe, death was often considered a mercy. Many punishments were deliberately designed to prolong suffering, make examples of the condemned, and strip away dignity long before life ended. Some victims begged to be executed rather than endure what awaited them. These are medieval punishments so horrific that, for many, death would have been kinder. Justice through terror. Medieval legal systems were deeply intertwined with religion and monarchy. Crime was not just an offense against society, it was seen as a sin against God and the natural order. Punishment, therefore, had to reflect divine wrath. Public executions and tortures served as entertainment, warnings, and moral lessons. Crowds gathered. Children watched. Fear was a tool of governance. What mattered most was not justice, it was obedience. The breaking wheel. One of the most agonizing punishments ever devised was the breaking wheel, also known as the Catherine wheel. The condemned was tied to a large wooden wheel or laid beneath it. An executioner would then systematically smash their bones using a heavy iron bar or hammer, starting with the legs, then arms, and finally the torso. Bones were shattered one by one, often in a specific order meant to keep the victim alive as long as possible. Sometimes, the broken limbs were woven through the spokes of the wheel, and the victim was left exposed on a pole to die slowly from shock, dehydration, or exposure. Death could take hours or even days. This punishment was typically reserved for murderers, traitors, or those who committed crimes against authority. Scaphism, death by exposure and insects. Perhaps one of the most horrifying punishments ever recorded was scaphism, a method of execution associated with ancient Persia but known to medieval scholars and rulers. The victim was trapped between two hollowed-out boats or wooden planks, leaving only the head, hands, and feet exposed. They were force-fed milk and honey, causing severe diarrhea. The body was then smeared with honey and left outdoors. Insects were drawn to the body in swarms. Flies laid eggs. Maggots burrowed into flesh. Rats gnawed at exposed skin. The victim slowly died from infection, dehydration, and being eaten alive, sometimes over the course of weeks. This was not just death. It was total annihilation. The Iron Maiden. Few medieval devices are as infamous as the Iron Maiden. A human-sized metal coffin lined with inward-facing spikes. Contrary to popular belief, many historians argue that it was used more symbolically than practically. However, versions of spike-lined confinement devices did exist. The victim was placed inside, and the door closed. The spikes were positioned to avoid immediate vital organs, ensuring slow bleeding rather than instant death. Some victims were left trapped for hours or days. Darkness, pain, suffocation. The psychological torture alone was devastating. The knowledge that every movement caused deeper wounds. Hanging, drawing, and quartering. Reserved for high treason, this punishment was designed to completely erase the condemned from both society and memory. The process was deliberate. One, the victim was dragged through the streets on a wooden hurdle. 2, hanged until unconscious, but not dead. 3, disemboweled while still alive. 4, beheaded. 5, the body is cut into 4 parts. The remains were displayed in public places as warnings. The goal was humiliation, terror, and the destruction of identity. It was a message to anyone who dared challenge the crown. The rack. The rack was not meant to kill, It was meant to extract confessions. Victims were tied by their wrists and ankles to a wooden frame. As the executioner turned a handle, the body was slowly stretched. Joints dislocated, muscles tore, bones cracked. The pain was excruciating, but death was rarely immediate. Survivors were often permanently disabled, unable to walk or work again. Many confessed to crimes they never committed, just to make the pain stop. Truth was irrelevant. Compliance was everything. The Brazen Bull. The Brazen Bull was a hollow bronze statue shaped like a bull. The condemned was locked inside, and a fire was lit beneath it. As the metal heated, the person inside was slowly roasted alive. Pipes within the statue transformed screams into sounds resembling a bull's roar, turning human agony into a twisted performance. Executioners and spectators believed this made the punishment more appropriate and theatrical. Death could take hours. The stocks and pillory, living torture. Not all punishments involved execution, some were worse. Victims placed in stocks or pillories were restrained in public squares for hours or days. Crowds were encouraged to mock, spit on, throw rotten food, stones, or even excrement. People suffered broken bones, infections, and psychological trauma. Some were blinded or beaten to death by mobs. The humiliation often lasted far longer than the physical punishment. Social reputation, critical in medieval society, was destroyed forever. The heretic's fork. A lesser-known but cruel device, the heretic's fork was a two-pronged metal collar strapped between the chin and chest. If the victim lowered their head, the spikes would pierce their flesh. Sleep became impossible. Many victims went days without rest, descending into madness. This punishment was often used by religious authorities to force recantation or obedience. Boiling alive. In some regions, especially for poisoners or counterfeiters, victims were boiled alive in oil, water, or molten substances. The process was slow and public. Skin peeled. Muscles cooked. Consciousness often remained until shock finally claimed the victim. This punishment emphasized the idea of purification through suffering. Flaying, punished while still alive. One of the most horrifying punishments was flaying, the removal of skin from the body.